Okay, so Exton Park's 55-acre vineyard. We're a mixture of Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Meunier. We've got south-facing sites and south-east-facing sites. The vineyard ranges from 60 metres above sea level to 120 metres above sea level. In the 55 acres of vines, we've got lots of different trials going through the whole lot. We've got different rootstocks, different pruning systems, different planting densities, different cover crops as well, I suppose. Within this whole bit, we get a very different flavour from each plot of vines. So the Chardonnay at the top of the field, as you can imagine, tastes very different from the Chardonnay at the bottom. From behind us, you can see is our majority Pinot Noir in the vineyard behind us, and we get a lot of our rosé from that vineyard. And I believe, being a southeast-facing vineyard, we get the midday suns on the south of on the side of the vines, more photosynthesis through the leaves, and more energy being produced, and as a result, a riper fruit, riper skin. And so we get it's a big part of the plot where we get our rosé from. We've got different pruning systems, which means that we use pruning systems to reduce the amount of crop we've got as well. So we try and keep our crop production down to about 3 tonnes per acre. We don't want to have the quantity to take over from the quality. The quality is the key ingredients. We don't buy any grapes in to dilute the flavour of our vineyard, and that's very important for us as well. So there are no more appropriate fields to plant on Exton Park, so this is all we've got, and this is what we're going to stick with. But let's walk up the top here, and we'll see the rest of it. Let's go. From here is at on the crossroads of the 5 different plots. You can get an idea of what 55 acres looks like, and it's almost a bird's eye view, I suppose.
Down to there.
And you can imagine the vines at the bottom there tasting very different, and a different microclimate from the vines up at the top and where we walk through at the moment. It's and different planting densities as well make a huge difference. It's going to be fascinating to see the progression of the whole lot. That's what I'm waiting for. We'll walk through because we're going to get rained on. I've got normally, hang on a minute, there's 3, well Ollie's a bit confusing because he works just as much in the winery as he works in the vineyard. Okay. He's connected to the whole lot, and he does a bit of everything. Yeah. And then we've got his brother and another guy, so effectively 2 full-time people in the vineyard, tractor drivers, and myself and Ollie. Yeah. And then we've got Corinne being head winemaker. And then Kit, our sales manager, they're the full. Yes, effectively carbon neutral. We sell the power back to the grid, but it's making us extremely eco-friendly for the whole place. All the buildings that we build have all got ground source heat pumps, so we're trying to reduce the amount of power that we're using all the way through. We've got this vineyard here is on the Chablis pruning system, which Corinne has convinced me to give it a go. So she took me out to Champagne, and I had a lesson with one of her friends up in the hills on their vineyard. Exactly, yes, quite exactly. But it's
so why the Chablis pruning system?
Well, so with Guillot, you've got 3 canes with 6 or 7 buds on each cane. Sorry, 2 canes with 6 or 7 buds on each cane. In the Chablis system, you have 3 canes with 5 buds on each cane. Buds 2, 3, and 4 should be the most fruitful buds on a cane. So effectively, we're maximising the most fruitful buds. So we should get bigger bunches, but less of them. But effectively the same amount of weight, but more energy going to less bunches. And that's the idea. But the other thing is that we're restricting the vigour of the vines by taking off quite a lot of carbohydrates from the vines each year by the way we prune them. And we prune them in a sort of rotation, of a 3-year rotation. So the third year wood is always taken away and replaced by the 2nd year, and on, which is very difficult to explain unless you see them without any leaves on the vines. And I've actually got a pair of secateurs in my hand, admittedly, but it's going to be fascinating to see what it is. This is not typically Chablis pruning because, of course, in Champagne the vines are all down on the floor. anglified, is that the word? These ones to try and because I've got to keep them away from pheasants, and I want the more airflow through the vineyard so I want the vines away from the ground, so there's more airflow, and the wind can then dry off our any mildews. So having the wider rows and things, and being on a hill quite exposed, is working straight to our favour of blowing the wind straight through, drying all the leaves off. So at the moment it's lovely to dry from this morning. So we'll go into the winery, and then hopefully once you've seen all this bit, it will match it all up together, and we can and it all starts to make sense. That's the idea. Right, so once we've harvested the grapes, we bring them back as quickly as we can. We put the grapes into one of our Busher inertis presses. Each press has got a gasket on the lid, so we can air seal the lid when we tighten the lid up. We then push all the oxygen out of the press and replace the space with nitrogen. We then do a whole press cycle under nitrogen with no chance of the juice oxidizing with oxygen. So as a result, we preserve the fresh flavour from the vineyard in the press, and we can also use less sulphur because of the no oxygen. Each press, the computer in each press organises a pump. The pump knows when the chamber on the press is filled, and it pumps the juice into one of our settling tanks. Each tank is filled with CO2, so there's no chance of the juice touching oxygen. We then settle out the juice to get the pith and things out of the vineyard, and move it into one of the bottom tanks. In the bottom tanks, we then inoculate with yeast and start the first fermentation to make a base wine. With every plot in the vineyard, we do that individually, and we keep all these wines separate into the tanks we go next door to show you. So once we've got our base wines, we can move the wines into these tanks and keep all the different trials in the vineyard separate. Once we know what blends we want to do from this year and from previous years where we've done the same thing, we then blend the wines together to make for example, our Brut, which has got 24 different wines in it altogether. Once we know what our blends are going to be and we're ready for bottling, we then add a bit of yeast and sugar into the bottles and put a beer cap onto the top of the bottles. We then lie those bottles down for a minimum 15 months for a non-vintage, or a minimum of 3 years for our vintage wine. We lay them down in a temperature-controlled room, which is down next to below the winery. Once that's all been done, after the 15 months or 3 years, we then riddle the wine and turn each bottle upside down, so all the sediment is sitting on the beer cap. We then freeze each beer cap to -28 and flip off the beer cap, and the pressure that's been produced through the second fermentation shoots out the sediment. We then put a cork on, put a cage on, and it's ready to label. Process done. So with some of the wines, Corinne likes to play around. In this room down here, she calls her spice rack. So Corinne in here calls this her spice rack, and we've got wines from previous years in here that we can use little bits and pieces for to make special cuvées. They're not used for our non-vintage range. We want to keep our non-vintage a complete expression of the terroir of the vineyard and not overpower that flavour with oak. So this is all this is for different vintages and special cuvées. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, we'll do a trip around.
So how big is the actual estate altogether?
So the whole estate altogether is just under 1,000 acres. With the vineyard in itself is 55 acres. The Exton part of it that was bought in 2009 is in total 250 acres that joins on, so the rest is Warnford estate. So if we I'll drive you through the top and go back down through the middle. Start with our highest point at 120 metres above sea level of St Pinot Meunier on a Chablis pruning system. about to come through and trim the leaves off and smelt it up neatly. You can see through my window, I think, the grapes that are coming through. They're going through a stage at the moment called bunch closure, which is when they start to swell and the bunches close up. So it's the first sign of it really that harvest is going to be it's going to be a good-looking harvest at the moment, and it's going to be early, at least 2 weeks earlier than normal. Usually, on average, we harvest on the 15th of October. This year, I'm thinking maybe 26th September, maybe the beginning of October. I can choose my. I get a team in to come and harvest, and I've got about a week's play of I've got to tell them 7 days in advance of when the day's going to be. I have to do a predicted day in a couple of weeks' time. I've got to say when I think it's going to be exactly on the date, and then we'll see. We'll work on that. But, so on the my right-hand side here, the oldest vines that planted in 2003, you can tell by the thickness of the stems that they're good, well-established vines. It's important with these vines, we didn't get any fruit off them for the first 4 years, and I was very eager to make sure that the root base was good and strong, and I wasn't going to stress the vines out at all. Usually on more fertile soil, you get you can get your first fruit in the 3rd year. From here is quite a nice view of what sort of slope we're on, and you can see the tractor down the bottom there. That's about 60 metres above sea level. So you can imagine the microclimate down there being very, very different from the microclimate up the top. A lot warmer down the bottom there. We've got our planting densities higher, and so we're going to get a completely different flavoured fruit from down there. It's going to be very interesting. I'll carry on going through the Meon Valley, which we're overlooking. We're on the side of, and the South Downs Way. Meon Valley is a big, wide valley, but it goes north-south, which funneled the cold air that we had at the end of April this year. Then we'll drive through. Oh, should we drive down the bottom? And you can see up the top, can't you? So my next job is to leaf strip around the fruit zone on the vine. So what I'm plan to do is to take off all the leaves around the fruit on the east-facing side of all the vines. So on the southeast facing sites, be on this side of the vines, not on the other. I don't want the sun to burn the grapes, but I want the sun in the morning to dry the grapes off. So and then midday sun to have nice dappled shade in the afternoon. That's the idea. I used to work for a South African man and he explained. He said. His philosophy of what a comfortable grape would be is imagine what you would want to be if you're sitting in a hammock under a tree. You don't want to be straight sunlight, you don't want complete shade. And that's quite a good way of thinking about it when we're trying to organise the leaf stripping. So we've got all our cover crops are growing very nicely as well. Majority all Pinot Noir on the southeast facing site where a lot of our rosé comes from. And then we've got a little bit of Pinot Meunier down the bottom here as well, which again tastes very, very different from the Pinot Meunier at the top. There we go. We get the on nice sunny days. It's a bit too windy today, but that copse of trees that you're looking up at the moment, it's a perfect place to have a wine tasting. Right in the vineyard. There's definitely something about tasting a glass of wine whilst looking at the vines that produce those grapes, I think. Here we are. Okay, well that's Exton Park. Is that enough for the video, do you think? Excellent.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Righto, down for lunch.
I like the noise.
Oh. Going tonight, this thing I was going to tonight going